Under a blazing summer sky, a wealthy tourist's derisive act, spitting in the face of a royal guard, was meant to assert dominance, assuming that the guard's legendary silence equated to weakness. But when this highly decorated veteran finally responded, his measured words not only humbled the offenders, but redefined the very notion of strength. The relentless August sun bore down on the grounds of Buckingham Palace, its radiant beams dancing off the intricately carved gates where throngs of visitors had congregated. Smartphones were aloft, each capturing what was anticipated to be another fleeting moment with British royalty. Amidst the lively chatter and excited faces, the royal guard, Edwin Fitzroy, stood immobile, his presence as steadfast as the palace's ancient stone walls. Clad in his impeccable red uniform, which had somehow retained its pristine condition despite the sweltering heat, Edwin was far from an average sentry. With 8 years of service under his belt, his career was marked not only by the honor of wearing the regal uniform, but also by the hard-won wisdom gleaned from 2 tours in Afghanistan. Those deployments had instilled in him a deep understanding of discipline and sacrifice, his numerous commendations a quiet reminder of battles fought and won, reminders that now rested in the modest flat he called home in London. Yet, as he stood at his post before the palace, Edwin embodied a duty that went far beyond ceremonial display. Each morning, before the faintest hint of dawn, Edwin would rise and devote 3 painstaking hours to preparing his uniform. Every button was polished until it gleamed like a mirror, every strap and buckle arranged with military precision. To some, such meticulous attention to detail might seem superfluous for what many dismissed as ceremonial pomp, but Edwin knew the truth. His attire was steeped in centuries of tradition, every crease and fold a tribute to the unwavering commitment of those who had come before him. It's not merely about standing still, he would later reflect. It's about becoming a living emblem of values greater than oneself. Every snapshot taken by a tourist, every wave from a child, and every feeble attempt at provocation was met with the unyielding dignity demanded by his role. On that fateful Thursday afternoon, the usual parade of sightseers took on a different hue. A group of American visitors was making its way toward his post, led by a man whose expensive polo shirt and designer sunglasses could not obscure his air of entitlement. The clock had just struck 2:30 p.m., the sun high overhead and the crowd at its densest. None of the onlookers, absorbed in their quest for a perfect photo, could have predicted that they were about to witness an event that would challenge the very ideals of duty, discipline, and honor. Even Edwin, who had weathered 8 years of service through the harshest weather, the most aggressive taunts, and even the crucible of combat, could not have foreseen that the next 17 minutes would push his training to its limits. As the American group advanced, the atmosphere grew charged with tension. Edwin's unbroken composure was a hallmark of his service, a discipline honed in both the scorching deserts and rugged mountains of Afghanistan. But then, among the group, a young man approached, a man who would later be identified as Derek Monroe. Though Edwin did not yet know his name, something about the man's demeanor set him apart. Clad in an expensive polo and wearing a smirk that reeked of privilege, Derek exuded the kind of entitlement that Edwin had encountered all too often. Derek was unaccustomed to being disregarded. Back in his native Texas, his family's oil fortune had always ensured that he received the admiration he believed he deserved. At elite country clubs in Dallas, attentive staff and enraptured executives had cemented his sense of superiority. Even here in London, with first-class flights, 5-star accommodations, and exclusive dining experiences, Derek maintained that aura of unchallenged entitlement, until he faced the stoic presence of Edwin Fitzroy. That morning had started like any other for Derek, a lavish champagne breakfast at a prestigious hotel with admirers vying for his attention, followed by an indulgent spree at a renowned department store where attendants hurried to offer him exclusive previews. But as the day progressed and the effects of indulgence took hold, a restless impulse began to surface, a need to assert his importance in increasingly theatrical ways. "Hey, look at this guy!" Derek called out to his companions, his voice resonating with the drawl of old money. "Bet you $50 I can make him crack." His friends, already busy recording with their smartphones, chuckled in anticipation. They had spent the morning bar-hopping through London's most fashionable venues, their American Express cards opening doors to places few could enter. Now, fueled by liquid courage, they were ready to witness what Derek deemed real entertainment. The initial attempts were all too predictable. Derek posed beside Edwin, snapping selfies with exaggerated expressions and flashing peace signs. "Come on, buddy, smile for the camera," he jeered as his cohorts laughed and cheered, emboldened by the mounting attention. Tourists began to gather, their phones pointed to capture every moment. A street vendor, recognizing the brewing trouble from years of similar episodes, slowly pushed his cart aside. Edwin, however, remained unmoved. With his eyes fixed straight ahead, he silently recited the oath that had become his armor over the years. He had endured much: wounds and loss from firefights in distant provinces, the relentless roar of combat, and the weight of responsibility that had once cost him dearly. In his mind, this was just another unruly tourist intoxicated by arrogance, a minor disturbance in the grand scheme of his duty. But Derek, sensing his audience and frustrated by Edwin's unyielding silence, persisted. He advanced further, his designer cologne mingling with the scent of expensive scotch, invading Edwin's personal space. "What's with the funny hat, man? Lose a bet?" Derek mocked, reaching toward Edwin's cap, as though to ruffle the immaculate appearance of the uniform. Even in his drunken state, a small, perhaps subconscious voice reminded him of the unspoken rules forbidding any physical interference with a guard. His hand paused, hovering uncertainly, while a middle-aged woman in the crowd interjected with a sharp British admonishment. "Show some respect, young man." Her grip on her handbag tightened as her words rippled through the gathering. Yet rather than abate, they seemed only to intensify Derek's resolve. With a theatrical bow that belied his inner turmoil, Derek turned to the growing crowd. His expensive sunglasses, catching the afternoon light, did little to hide the hollowness in his eyes. "My tax dollars probably pay for this whole circus," he sneered, a remark that, had it been historically accurate, might have drawn a laugh. Instead, it dripped with bitterness and deliberate provocation. Some of his compatriots exchanged uneasy glances, their discomfort palpable even as the recording continued. Meanwhile, Edwin's mind worked quietly, noting every nuance, the calculated spread of Derek's friends to capture the incident from multiple angles, the awkward shuffling of other tourists, and the furtive glances of a palace security officer in the distance. His military training had honed his ability to assess subtle changes, a slight sway in Derek's stance, the forced nature of his laugh, and the rhythmic clenching of his right hand. These were signs of a man nearing the brink of an ill-advised escalation, a stark contrast to the usual mischief Edwin had encountered. As the afternoon wore on, the sun began to cast elongated shadows across the palace grounds. A cool breeze whispered the distant chimes of Big Ben. Edwin, who had stood vigilant since dawn, was a model of stillness, his muscles conditioned to remain poised despite the creeping fatigue. Perhaps it was then that Derek declared, "I think you're cracked," as he boldly stepped directly in front of Edwin. His expensive loafers scraped the pavement as he steadied himself. "Hey, robot! Anyone home?" he jeered, waving his hand just inches from Edwin's face. The guard could even detect the lingering scent of scotch on the young man's breath, a scent that did nothing to render the insult more tolerable. By this point, The crowd had swelled, comprising onlookers both entertained and alarmed. Some began to record with a heavy sense of unease, while others drew back, their eyes filled with concern. A young couple hurriedly pulled their children away, casting disapproving looks over their shoulders. Yet Derek's friends were too engrossed by the spectacle to notice, one even exclaiming, "This is going viral for sure," as he adjusted his camera for a better angle. Every word and gesture seemed to be a desperate bid for internet fame, a bid that would soon unravel in a way he could never have imagined. In a moment that would become etched in the memories of those present, Derek's performance took an even darker turn. His expensive polo, now damp with perspiration, clung to him as he swayed, his voice gaining a theatrical lilt. "I think these guards are just scared," he slurred to the crowd, his words a cocktail of arrogance and liquid courage. "Scared to move, scared to speak, scared to be real. They hide behind tradition because they're too weak to face reality." For Edwin, these words conjured memories of a brutal morning in a far-off province, where he had stood unyielding under heavy fire for hours to protect a wounded comrade. Weak was a word he could not abide. Drawing closer, Derek's designer sunglasses now hung loosely from his collar as he whispered, "What do they even do here? Just stand around like statues while the world laughs at them?" His voice was laced with a venom that sent ripples of discomfort through the crowd. Even as his friends continued to film, an elderly gentleman, an RAF veteran with his pin glinting in the sunlight, stepped forward and admonished, "Son, that's enough. You've had your fun." But Derek, intoxicated by his own bravado and the raucous applause of his peers, refused to heed reason. His face contorted into a mask of disdain, a blend of contempt and a desperate plea for validation. Time seemed to stretch in that charged moment. As onlookers captured every second from myriad angles, none could have predicted the dramatic shift that was about to unfold. In the blink of an eye, the spittle, hastily expelled, landed on Edwin's cheek just beneath his right eye. For a fraction of a second, even the chirping of birds ceased, as the collective gasp of the crowd created an eerie silence that blanketed the palace grounds. Derek, expecting a reaction, a breakdown, a moment of triumph, stood frozen, his smirk faltering. In contrast, Edwin did not budge. The saliva slowly trickled down his cheek, like a single tear marking a moment of profound dignity, yet his expression remained resolute and impassive. Then, as if on cue, the sound of hurried footsteps shattered the stillness. Palace security, alerted by the disturbance, began moving through the throng. But it was the measured approach of a commanding figure from behind Edwin that truly signaled the turning point, a figure whose deliberate, rhythmic march resonated with the weight of authority. Captain Avery, leading his patrol with quiet confidence, signaled that the moment had come to restore order. Suddenly, Derek's expression shifted. The reality of potential consequences became starkly apparent. His friends lowered their cameras, their earlier excitement replaced by dawning apprehension. One of them muttered under his breath, "Dude, what have you done?" While the circle of onlookers tightened, each sensing that a historic reckoning was imminent. For the first time since the ordeal began, Edwin's eyes moved. They locked onto Derek with an intensity reminiscent of tracking enemy movements across rugged terrains. That gaze, free from anger or hatred, carried the full weight of centuries of honor, duty, and tradition. It was a silent rebuke to a man who had overstepped every boundary. Captain Avery's clear, authoritative command, "Guard, stand down," sliced through the tension like a blade through silence, granting Edwin permission to finally act, a gesture he had not permitted in the 8 hours of relentless duty. In one deliberate, measured motion, Edwin pivoted precisely 45 degrees and came to full attention. With the precision that marked every moment of his career, he saluted his superior. "Sir, permission to address the situation," he intoned with quiet authority. What followed would be recounted in countless different ways, some describing it as a stirring speech, others as a masterclass in dignity. But all agreed it was a moment of unparalleled gravitas. With deliberate calm, Edwin raised his gloved hand and slowly wiped away the spit from his cheek. Each movement was unhurried, imbued with a ceremonial grace that spoke to generations of soldiers before him. His voice, when he finally spoke, resonated across the courtyard, echoing the sacrifices of those who had stood guard before him. 8 years ago, I took an oath, he began, his tone clear and unwavering. Not only to the crown, but to everything these gates stand for: tradition, honor, sacrifice. While you were busy in that pub mustering the courage to create a spectacle, I was here, guarding a legacy that spans centuries. The crowd fell silent, their devices forgotten as they absorbed every measured word. Even Derek's cohorts, previously animated by their own excitement, now stood in hushed dismay. "Do you see this uniform?" Edwin continued, addressing not just Derek but everyone present. "Before I earned the privilege to wear it, I served 2 grueling tours overseas. I witnessed brothers in arms fall while defending the very values you now mock. This is no costume. It is a symbol of dedication, something you seem utterly incapable of grasping." His voice then broadened to address the entire assembly. "Every day, we stand here not as inanimate statues or mere attractions for your cameras, but as living reminders of the discipline, honor, and sacrifice that have built and continue to protect this nation. We endure the heat, the cold, the rain, and yes, even the occasional fool who mistakes our resolve for frailty." Attempting to interject and salvage his crumbling bravado, Derek opened his mouth, but a sharp look from Captain Avery silenced him instantly. 2 police officers had stepped forward, their presence a somber acknowledgement of the gravity of the offense. With a voice that mixed measured authority with a hint of finality, Edwin continued, "You wanted to know if we're human. We are. Indeed, we feel every insult, every jest, every attempt to rattle us. Yet we remain steadfast, for our duty demands nothing less. Some traditions, no matter how misunderstood, must be upheld." Turning his gaze back to Derek, whose earlier smirk had evaporated into visible discomfort, Edwin's tone softened, yet retained its piercing clarity. "You came here, seeking a viral moment, a fleeting taste of internet fame. Congratulations, sir, you've achieved that. But not in the way you imagined. Instead of exposing a weakness, you have only underscored why we stand resolute every day, to defend honor against disrespect, to maintain dignity against ignorance, and to remind us all that true strength lies in unwavering character." An elderly RAF veteran in the crowd nodded slowly, tears glistening in his eyes, while parents gathered their children close, whispering lessons of respect and valor. "I do not expect an apology," Edwin concluded, his final words carrying the weight of an era. "But I do hope that one day you will understand. This moment is not about you or even me. It is about the legacy we safeguard, not just these hallowed halls and the people within, but the principles they embody." With that, Edwin saluted Captain Avery once more and resumed his post with the same impeccable precision that had defined his service. The faint trace of spittle on his cheek had dried under the afternoon sun, leaving no blemish, just as Derek's attempt to mar an institution only served to highlight its brilliance. As uniformed officers moved in to escort Derek away, his expensive sunglasses slipped from his collar and clattered to the pavement. His friends, now dismayed and shamed, avoided eye contact as they trailed behind, their once enthused recordings now silent testimony to a moment of reckoning. One of the officers, addressing the increasingly quiet crowd, remarked gravely, Assaulting a royal guard is a serious offense. You will have ample time to reflect on Guard Fitzroy's words as we process your case. Within hours, videos of the incident were circulating across social media. Unlike the countless pranks that filled the internet, this clip struck a resounding chord worldwide, a display not of breaking composure, but of unyielding dignity in the face of provocation. The hashtag #RespectTheGuard quickly began trending on Twitter, with thousands commenting, "This is what real strength looks like. Standing firm against disrespect is a lesson we all need." Meanwhile, Derek's identity, once a symbol of unchecked privilege, was swiftly overshadowed by a tidal wave of public condemnation. His family's public relations team scrambled to mitigate the fallout as exclusive clubs in London discreetly removed his name from their guest lists. But perhaps the most lasting impact was the conversation sparked across dinner tables and in classrooms. Parents and teachers used the incident as a catalyst to discuss respect, duty, and the importance of honoring traditions that might seem archaic but are vital to the fabric of society. In one particularly poignant moment, a group of schoolchildren, witnesses to the day's events, wrote heartfelt letters to Buckingham Palace. One 9-year-old captured the sentiment perfectly. "Dear Guard Fitzroy, today you taught us that being strong isn't about being mean. Sometimes the strongest thing is to show kindness and respect, even when others are not." Legal proceedings against Derek moved swiftly. During sentencing, the judge's comments were widely circulated. "In assaulting a guard who stands for duty, honor, and respect, you have not only harmed an individual, you have struck at the very values that bind our society." A hefty fine was imposed, and community service at organizations supporting veterans was mandated, a humbling experience that, in Derek's own later admission, no amount of privilege could have prepared him for. For Edwin Fitzroy, that day became more than a viral moment. It was enshrined in training materials for military units and law enforcement agencies around the globe. His unflinching response in the face of derision became a case study in maintaining authority through character rather than brute force. And the very next day, Edwin resumed his post with the same unwavering commitment to duty, his silent vigil now imbued with an even deeper respect from those who truly understood what it meant to stand guard, not just over a palace, but over the enduring principles of honor and sacrifice. What would you have done if you were in Edwin's position? Could you maintain such dignity when confronted with blatant disrespect? Share your thoughts and let us know when you last witnessed true strength. Strength demonstrated through restraint rather than reaction. If this story resonated with you, please like and share it with someone who values honor and dignity, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful narratives about tradition and respect. Remember, true strength isn't about breaking others down, it's about standing firm in your values, even when challenged.